Journalists, activists, human rights defenders have been at the forefront of the global movement for freedom, equality and justice. Such perseverance has achieved landmark victories for the rights of women, migrants, people discriminated against on the basis of descent, minorities, our environment, and so much more. And we will continue to persevere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, High Commissioner. We'll take questions 3 at a time, and I'll start in the room. Please identify yourself, the news outlet you represent, and try to limit yourself to 1 question if you can, so that everyone gets a chance to ask. We'll start here.
Thank you very much. Guten Tag, Herr Türk. Christiane Ulrich, German Press Agency. You were talking about the anti-rights and anti-gender movements. Can you be a bit more specific? Who exactly are you talking about and who is funding these? You were talking about them being increasingly well funded. Thank you.
Laurent Siro, Swiss News Agency. Thanks for that usual press conference. A few days ago, the Trump administration unveiled a new national security strategy, which looks like an attempt to interfere in the democratic life and the civic space and civic liberties of hundreds of millions of citizens throughout Europe. How concerned are you by that? Thank you.
Go ahead. Antonio, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Turk, for the press conference. Antonio Proto from F Spanish News Agency. I have some questions about Venezuela. Do you believe that an international mechanism should be created to investigate the U.S. attacks against alleged drug traffickers, which appear to involve multiple human rights violations, including extrajudicial killings and disproportionate use of force? And more broadly, what is your position on the U.S. government's open threats of military action against Venezuela? Thank you.
Thank you. High Commissioner, over to you.
Look, on the anti-rights and, if you like, anti-gender movement that we see, it is indeed one of my biggest worries, because we have detected some of this in various parts of the world. What I have referred to is indeed the European Parliamentary Forum, which did, and I would refer you to their report and we can share it with you, which have documented this, and they have been able to document it in terms of the funding that goes into it. But this is, I think, just the tip of the iceberg. We have heard around the world that a lot more funding goes into well-organized cross-regional strategies to push back on gender issues and more broadly on human rights issues. And it affects in particular gender equality, LGBTIQ+, sexual and reproductive rights, rights of migrants and refugees, but also climate action. And what I think we need to be aware of is that there is this well-funded way of doing it, and that's why I refer to that particular report. And we need to be very vigilant about it, because it also is a distraction from the very normative system that has been established at the moment that we have, and that is non-ideological, because sometimes human rights are seen as an ideology, but they are not. They are not partisan. They are the normative framework of our social contract, and we need to be very careful when this part of the social contract is in jeopardy. On the issue of the just recently issued national security strategy, when it comes to Europe, I mean, Europe is a continent that, not least given the history of the continent, has benefited precisely from the promotion and protection of human rights. It was one of the first continents to establish it, in fact, is still the first continent to establish a human rights system that is one of the strongest in the world, because you have a European Court of for Human Rights in Strasbourg, European Convention for Human Rights, and that convention has served Europe extremely well. because it has precisely dealt with some of the issues, some of the dilemmas that are often discussed in this transatlantic relationship of late, including issues of freedom of expression. When it comes to freedom of expression, it's absolutely clear there are limits to it when it comes to hate speech, harmful disinformation, the incitement to violence. So I hope that all those who look at that strategy and you analyze it are doing it very much in recognition of the incredible path that Europe, and in particular the European Union, have had over the last couple of decades to build indeed a continent that is built on peace, human rights and dignity, with all the issues that there are. As always, there are issues, but it's important to honor that incredible achievement for humanity. When it comes to Venezuela, and in particular, not so much Venezuela, I mean, obviously concerned about the tensions that exist. It's clear that, I mean, my overarching concern is the human rights issues in Venezuela themselves. I have been extremely vocal about how we see the situation. We also know that any escalation is not in the interest of anyone. And so our call is always for de-escalation, for finding a way to deal with this through constructive engagement between the two countries. When it comes to the events, especially what you referred to in the Caribbean, as you know, I've been extremely clear. I consider them a violation of international law, in particular international human rights law. I have asked for prompt, independent investigations. We have seen a debate now in the US, in Congress as well, about these strikes, and I hope that they will lead to a prompt, serious investigation that is independent, so that we can get to the bottom of what has happened there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I've then got Jamie and Mohammed, and we'll come to you. Thank you. Go on.
Sorry if I'm cutting in on anyone. I wanted to ask about Sudan. I also want to ask about the Trump administration, but I'll restrict myself to one question. Can you tell us a little bit about an update that you might have about the fate of these tens of thousands of people who were not able to flee the RSF attacks on El Fasher? And could you explain your current thinking about the phrase, whether or not crimes against humanity have been committed there? I know that some special rapporteurs have used that language. What's the state of your reflection on that? And just in general, the types of crimes that you've documented so far in El Fasher? Because you mentioned, of course, Kordofan, that you're fearful that it may be the next El Fasher.
Thank you so much. My name is Mohammed, from a reporter of Turkey's Anadolu News Agency. My question is about Gaza and Israel, and the following the Israel's actions in Gaza, the effectiveness of international law being questioned worldwide. What do you think needs to be done to regain this trust and ensure Israel's accountability? And what is the role of the UN and the member states in this regard? Thank you.
Beyza Dönmez, Anadolu's English Wire. I also want to ask about Gaza, especially it's been said that we are close to the second phase of the ceasefire. Hamas officials have said that more pressure must be put on Israel to reach an agreement on the phase 2. And also, after the ceasefire, we see about 400 people being killed. So, well, how do you evaluate that? And also, there has been Israel's military chief saying that the yellow line that divides Gaza under Donald Trump's ceasefire plan is new border now. And what is your comment on that? Thank you.
Look, on Al-Fasher, we have been able to send teams to Chad, but also to North Sudan. So we had a chance to interview witnesses from what happened in Al-Fasher independently from each other, which I think for us is very important because, as you know, we have a very strict methodology when it comes to documenting serious human rights violations and atrocity crimes. And the pattern that emerges that thousands of people had been killed within a very short period of time, end of October. We don't know the exact number, but we are talking about thousands, not just hundreds. We are talking about thousands of people that have been killed. There were summary executions. There were people who were trying to leave Al-Fasher who were killed when they tried to leave. There were very strong, there were witness statements about rape and gang rape, including in front of family members. There were attacks also, and there was abductions for ransom. There was widespread looting. So yes, we are talking about very serious atrocity crimes, war crimes for sure, potentially also crimes against humanity. We are talking about plus there is the ethnically motivated violence that has come into play as well, which then puts us into the territory of crimes against humanity. So yes, we have an extremely serious situation. Let's also not forget that there were 18 months of siege, and that siege was brutal, with people not being able to eat much and with famine being declared. My worry is that the international community watches what's happening now in Kordofan, and we cannot allow a repeat of this absolutely horrific situation in Kordofan. And we really need to see an all-out effort to see a cessation of hostilities, to see a cessation to come back to not peace agreement, but also civilian rule, because we don't have civilian rule. Let's not forget that as well. On Gaza and Israel, of course, international law is international law. It doesn't get changed because it's not respected or when it's breached in a massive way. Unfortunately, that's what it is. We should be very grateful that we have international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law, because it gives us a base and a measure to assess situations. And accountability is critical. We very often forget about accountability, and in particular in this case, but in any other case as well, accountability also means beyond the domestic side, because, as you know, we have had our issues with the domestic accountability mechanisms in Israel that we don't think are working. We need international accountability, and as you know, there's an ongoing ICC process, and that's very important. And that's the one way for us to make very worried because others will use the fact that international law was not respected and will point to it. And we have heard this from even other belligerent parties. They point to different situations and they say, well, international law was breached here. Why can't I do it here either? So we have a very real issue. That's what international law is all about. Yes, we are worried about the current situation because the bloodshed that we saw and the carnage that we saw in the past has indeed is no longer there. But as I mentioned, we have over 350 attacks that we recorded since the ceasefire, and they were all in the vicinity of the so-called yellow line, with at least 121 Palestinians killed, including 7 women, 13 children, and many other injuries. So we're continuing to document this and to monitor it very carefully. And yes, we call on all parties to respect the ceasefire and to ensure that we can indeed move to the next phase. Thank you. The yellow line, yes. Well, the Security Council resolution is very clear about not calling anything a border or anything else. It is about a territory that needs to be respected in its entirety.
Thank you. In the back, please. I believe Metropole.
About Haiti, what do you connaissance, quelle est ta connaissance de la force de 5000 soldats envoyés par le Conseil de sécurité et de 5 membres de la société civile? Où est-ce que ça en est? Avez-vous des informations?
Alors, je vais le dire en français d'abord et après en anglais. Absolument, la situation en Haïti est quelque chose qui nous préoccupe énormément. Comme vous savez, moi, j'étais en mission là-bas et en visite là-bas il y a 2 ans et j'ai suivi de très près la situation depuis. Et en fait, si on regarde les chiffres, on a vu cette année, on a documenté 5153 personnes qui étaient tuées. On voit de plus en plus que ce sont bien sûr les gangs qui se répandent dans les territoires, pas seulement au Port-au-Prince, mais on est aussi concerné ou préoccupé par le fait que le gouvernement et les forces, parce qu'ils utilisent une compagnie privée qui a utilisé des drones, et évidemment ça aussi peut. Et ça a déjà affecté des civils. Et je pense que justement dans des opérations du maintien du droit, c'est très important de respecter les droits humains et tout impact que ça peut avoir de leurs mesures sur les personnes. I'm also, and so I just mentioned that we have seen a deterioration in Haiti. If you look just at the numbers for this year, 5,153 killings, 2,349 injuries. We have seen a deterioration just also in rural areas outside Port-au-Prince. I'm also concerned about the use of drones by a private military company that the government is using, and we have again seen an impact on people with killings, over 700. And we absolutely need to make sure that the arms embargo is respected. And we've seen too much arms flowing into Haiti still. But also, when it comes to the multinational security support mission, aggression force that was adopted by the Security Council, we hope that there will be accelerated efforts to set it in train. I think it's a very slow process, much too slow, unfortunately. And we also need to make sure that in the implementation that human rights safeguards are fully respected, because when it comes to law enforcement operations, that needs to be part of the package.
Thank you. Yes, Jeremy, Catherine, and then in the back.
Thank you, Ravinia. Jeremy Lange for the French National Radio over there. If I may, I will ask my question in French as well, and if you can respond in French, that's perfect. Otherwise, English will do fine. Vous avez parlé, vous avez dit que les droits humains étaient attaqués dans votre préambule, propos liminaire. On a le sentiment qu'ils sont attaqués depuis maintenant un certain nombre d'années. Je voulais simplement avoir votre réaction par rapport au fait que ce qui est peut-être nouveau, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, ces attaques semblent provenir de la part des pays qui étaient les donneurs traditionnels pour les droits de l'homme. Comment votre bureau deal avec ça, comment fait face au fait que voilà, les donneurs traditionnels sont aujourd'hui ceux qui attaquent le plus sévèrement les droits de l'homme. On pense aux États-Unis, mais également des pays européens. Et une deuxième question peut-être sur les finances aussi. Vous avez parlé des fact-finding missions qui ne peuvent plus avoir lieu, des country missions qui sont également affectés par les cuts. Je suis désolé, je fais du franglish. Est-ce que vous pouvez partager avec nous aujourd'hui quels sont les les prochaines entités ou les prochains pays qui sont menacés par ces coupes budgétaires? Est-ce que voilà, vous pouvez nous dire, dans 3-4 mois, si on n'a pas d'argent, ce pays-là également va devoir réduire notre mission, cette mission ne va pas pouvoir être renouvelée. Voilà, est-ce que c'est quelque chose qui est déjà dans les tuyaux?
No worries. Catherine, please go ahead.
Oui, Catherine, ARD, German public radio and TV. It's also about Europeans. Yesterday, the European Union decided to considerably weaken their Supply Chain Act. What's your reaction about it? How does it impact human rights worldwide?
Thank you, Mr. Ravena. Thank you, High Commissioner Turk. This is Mr. Liang from China Economic Daily. My question is related with the interaction and convergence between human rights and business activity, which we have seen accelerated under your leadership of your good office. My question in particular is, in view of the fact that this year a lot of effort has been put into pushing forward the drafting of a legally binding instrument to regulate in human rights the activities of transnational business and enterprises. In view of the fact that a lot of effort has been put into this effort this year, may I have your comment on the progress we have on the ground now, and how you foresee this effort with further progress in the next year, in view of the fact that this binding nature, legally binding nature, is something quite innovative and revolutionary. Thank you very much.
Alors, je vais tout d'abord répondre en français, si c'est permis. Alors, je pense que ce qu'il faut faire d'une urgence, et on est en train de regarder ça avec beaucoup plus de détails, c'est justement une alliance globale sur les droits humains qui concerne tout d'abord les États membres, mais la société civile, les parlementaires, les villes. On a lancé cette campagne d'avoir plus des villes et aussi de la gouvernance régionale et locale, mais les parlementaires, la philanthropie, en fait, tout segment de la société pour se mobiliser en faveur des droits humains. Et je pense que ça peut nous aider à aussi communiquer d'une façon beaucoup plus efficace à tous ceux qui, pour le moment, sont soit sceptiques ou, en fait, connaissent pas assez ce que ça représente. Parce que, pour nous, quotidienne. Et je pense que, justement, ça, c'est extrêmement important. Et ce n'est pas une question de l'Ouest, c'est quelque chose d'universel. Parce que je peux vous dire, les jeunes que je rencontre au Bangladesh, par exemple, ou en Serbie, ce sont des jeunes, ou au Soudan, parce que j'étais là à un moment donné, ce sont des jeunes qui se battent pour les droits humains. Et ce n'est pas une question pour eux, c'est l'Ouest ou ce sont les bailleurs de fonds, c'est une question pour eux de survie et de mettre en sorte que leurs droits soient respectés. The next one on the fact-finding mission commissions of inquiry. At the moment, we are between 50 and 60% funding, which means that we are less able to document, or the fact-finding missions and commissions of inquiry are less able to document human rights violations. It has already had massive impact, for example, on the Commission of Inquiry on DRC, which we cannot fund at all. At the moment, we do not have the funds to set in train the Commission of Inquiry for DRC. So it has indeed very serious consequences. We hope that with the next budget cycle that we would be able to do so, but at the moment, this is not possible. On the supply chain Act, I mean, as I understand it, the discussions are still ongoing because there is this trilogy within the European Union. You probably saw that I took a public position on this omnibus resolution process. which wanted to make sure that those who decide on these things within the European Union are fully aware of the guiding principles on business and human rights. And we have had a lot of companies approach us, especially mid-sized companies who, in a way, want the predictability that comes from the business and human rights agenda. And they really embrace human rights because they see it in the long-term business interest to have a human rights compliant supply chain, for example, because they also know that their reputational risks could potentially be affected if, for example, they undertake activities where indeed violations happen, for example, labor standards and so forth. So we saw the current debate from a worryingly, because we hope that indeed they would take into account the standards that have been achieved. And it's not only us, civil society and High Commissioner's Office, it's also many companies that approached us from that perspective. Human rights and business activities, I mean, this is absolutely an area of that we really need to work on. And we had 2 weeks ago the Forum on Business and Human Rights here in Geneva. There were over 4,000, I think even probably some 5,000 participants because we had 1,000 of them online. It shows an incredible interest on the part of the business community to work on the human rights front. We also see, and you mentioned the legally binding instrument, it has taken a long time to even get to that point. But I do hope that indeed we would see a legally binding instrument. It's one area where non-state actors, in this case businesses, can exercise a lot of power, especially tech companies. I mean, let's look at the very big tech companies. They sometimes have budget that go even beyond the gross domestic income of an industrialized nation, which means they can exercise a lot of power. And human rights are the guardrails, but human rights are also the inspiration to do good and to influence technological development. So yes, business and human rights extremely important from our perspective.
Thank you. We have, I'll take two more questions in the room, and then I've got Olivia waiting very patiently online from Reuters, and 2 others online, and then I think it'll have to be a wrap. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. Alexandre Robois, AFP. About Sudan, you must of course be aware about the fact that there are a lot of reports stating that UAI is arming the RSF paramilitary force. Have your teams on the field been able to verify these accusations, and what's your point of view on the issue?
Thanks. Online, Olivia, please unmute.
Thank you very much. 2 questions, if I may. On the cuts that you outlined there, would you describe them as disproportionate in terms of how the cuts have landed on the Human Rights Office versus other areas of the UN? And secondly, if you may just outline your concerns from what you saw in the last couple of months in Gaza, particularly in Gaza City, in terms of the extent of airstrikes and demolitions in that area in the lead up to the ceasefire, and what in particular human rights concerns that has sparked among your team. Thank you.
Dina, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ravina, and thank you for the opportunity. My question is about Lebanon. I'm here. My question is about Lebanon and the huge gap between the numbers you gave on November 27 of killed in Lebanon. You mentioned 127 Lebanese who were killed, while the health, the Ministry of Public Health mentioned 333 civilians killed in Lebanon. Of course, after the ceasefire, Lebanon respected totally the ceasefire, and including Hezbollah, which also respected the ceasefire. So who are those 200 people who were killed and not mentioned in your report? Why they are not mentioned? And do you consider killing Hezbollah fighters who are not fighting anymore in Lebanon? Do they receive? Is it okay to kill them or not? Are they considered as civilians, including to the, according to the international law? How do you consider them? Another question on other attacks on Lebanon, for example, on Aito in the north of Lebanon, 23 people were killed during an attack, Israeli attack, and you mentioned that you will investigate this attack and other attacks also similar to the one on Ain al-Hilwi, the Palestinian camp, where around 13 children were killed while playing basketball. Is there any investigations about those attacks, and if you can give us any updates? Thank you.
Look, on Sudan, I think what is most urgently needed is respect for the arms embargo, and that is currently not the case. I mean, I just looked at the fact-finding missions report of the fact-finding mission report on Sudan, and their report of September 2025. And they talk about, they have actually received allegations that the parties, both parties, and the affiliated militias, obviously, use arms, ammunition, and unmanned aerial vehicles produced in 8 states, and that at least 16 states finance, manufacture, or facilitate weapons transfers. They have not been able to provide details of that, but they are, and I discussed it with them, they are actually looking into this. I mean, in order to get the evidence, this is not so easy, but it is also true that arms, as far as I know, there's only one still functioning factory that could produce arms, but the type of arms that we have seen that become more and more sophisticated, especially on the drone, when it comes to some of these drones, they obviously come from outside. And there are not only companies, but there are obviously interests to fund either party and provide them with arms. And yes, that is one of the very, very neuralgic points that need to be addressed, and I hope that there will be more focus on it. We have this division of labor with the fact-finding mission on this point. I mean, they will investigate this further, but of course, if we have any information that we can verify and bring to the table, we will do so. Then the issue of funding. Sorry, was there the funding? Yeah, the funding. On the funding. And, I mean, if I look at my colleagues in the UN system, all of them have been massively affected. If I just look at the humanitarian front, I mean, I think I saw the latest figures from UNHCR, 3.4 billion, UNDP, 4.5, UN Women, 600 million. So all of them, we are all affected. When it comes to the human rights system, we have a very complicated budget structure because we depend both on the regular budget, assessed contributions, and there we have the liquidity crisis, and we have extra budgetary funding. We have been disproportionately affected in the sense that if you cut what is already very scarce, and if you cut this even further, then obviously it has a huge impact. And in particular when it comes, and I want to make a strong plea for also human rights defenders, human rights organizations, grassroots organizations on the ground in particular, who all telling us that they will not be able to do their work anymore. And that is where the danger lies, because if you don't have the people who actually are defending human rights on a daily basis on the ground, and then a weakened safety net that comes from the international system, yes, it will weaken human rights enormously, and things will happen as a result that we could have prevented if we had a much stronger system. So yes, as I said, we are in survival mode when it comes to human rights, and I hope it's a bit of a wake-up call to everyone around the world to see that we are not becoming weaker, but actually end up stronger. On Lebanon. Yes. Yeah, no, yeah. Yes, so we actually, this is quite, when we issue data ourselves, we have a verification process. And that verification process always lags behind the actual data, and that's what comes with this. We are still we are actually in the process of doing it as we speak, so we will come up to numbers that we are verifying, and we then always use the numbers that come from official from the official statistics, but we actually go into this, and that's extremely important. I think we have also dealt with the issue of what happened in the north, from what I understand. And you also asked the question about if someone seizes armed activities and lays down arms, yes, then they are not to be considered combatants. Yeah. Sorry? Well, and that's why we emphasize very much that international humanitarian law is very clear about this. They are not to be killed if they are no longer combatants. Well, frankly, we hope that no one is killed anyway, but unfortunately, in a situation of war, that's what it is.
Of time, we just have John and Imen online. Olivia, I'm sorry I won't be able to give you a follow-up question because the High Commissioner will have to leave, but if you do have any follow-up questions, please do get in touch and we can send you written responses, or one of the spokespeople will be very happy to handle them. John and then Imen, please. John, go ahead.
Yes, good morning, High Commissioner. I was wondering, sir, if you could comment on the decision by the Australian government to ban the use of social media by adolescents. And what are your concerns? You mentioned the late John Ruggie. Are we seeing an increase in corporate social irresponsibility rather than responsibility? Thank you.
Imen, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, High Commissioner. I have a question. Actually, you mentioned that armed and military services revenue boosted by the war in Gaza. And there is several NGOs report that talk on Israeli testing the new weapons in Gaza. And my question is if your office have any investigation on that, and if you have any comment on countries that intend to purchase these weapons. Thank you.
Actually, just realized I forgot to answer one question from one journalist about, what do we see in terms of human rights impact in the situation in Gaza. I actually met yesterday a Palestinian who is working on mental health issues, and the response, what he described to me about the most serious mental health crisis that one can imagine after what had happened is extremely acute. What he described was harrowing in terms of trauma. Basically, everyone is traumatized, and especially children, you can imagine, and women. And I have had a chance to talk to some of my colleagues who have lost family members who mentioned to me what this means, and I can, only talk about the extreme trauma that I saw in them as well. So on Australia, well, I think we know how difficult it is for societies to grapple with the issue of how to keep children safe online. And we have had the social media platforms launched now quite a few years ago, but I don't think at the stage when they were launched that a human rights impact assessment was actually done. So we are actually catching up with the technological developments. So countries are going to try different things. And it's not only, by the way, Australia, it's also, we have a similar law in California, we have draft laws also in Europe. It's very important to keep monitoring what works, what doesn't work. But it is also very clear from a human rights perspective that the best interest of the child has to be taken into account in all of this, including the protection and safety concerns that children face. What then the best method is I think what we are actually experiencing as we speak. So it's very important. When it comes to broader issues of corporate responsibility, I have to say, as I said, I was very encouraged by the fact that we have so many people come to our Business and Human Rights Forum, and we have seen a lot more interest than ever before. So there's sometimes a bit of a disconnect between what we hear, including on the part of governments, and what actually those who are actively engaged want. The same, by the way, on climate. There's We are going back into climate denial in the US, for example. But if you look at the companies that want to do the right thing, they are actually doing the right thing, and they have moved on. They know that in the interest of good business, you will have to take into account climate impact and environmental impact. And, sorry, the last question was... Sorry? On Gaza, yes. I mean, obviously, our office, as you know, is monitoring, documenting. I have no specific information on what you have just mentioned, and we will ask him about that. Thank you.
Thank you, High Commissioner. We'll get back to you on that. And sorry, Jamie Olivia, please approach us afterwards. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.